But first, finally today, 10 months after he passed away, the Liberal Party has officially farewelled one of its favourite sons, Andrew Peacock. Foreign Minister for most of the Fraser years, party leader twice, former ambassador, of course, to the United States, the celebrated Colt from Kooyong, successor to Sir Robert Menzies in that seat, whose COVID-delayed memorial service was held at a Pax St Paul's Cathedral in Melbourne this morning. Notoriously, Peacock and John Howard were rivals throughout the 1980s. Peacock was the easygoing centrist who thought government's job was efficiently to manage the affairs of the nation. Howard was the conservative reformer who wanted to shake the system up so that its best features could be preserved for the future. Now, it is a conservative temptation, I know it is, to see the past as a golden era from which we've all declined. Even so, it's hard not to think we were once better served, or that there were better characters in our public life, and to compare the genial personal relationship that Howard had with Peacock, despite their rivalry, with the sabotage from so-called party moderates the Prime Minister Scott Morrison has had to endure this week. Despite their personal and philosophical differences, Howard and Peacock never let their relationship break down. It was referenced in one of the eulogies today that at no point did they ever stop talking. And they never let their rivalry stop them working together for Liberal election victories. With considerable humility, of course, Howard gave Peacock the chance to cap his public life with a successful term as our ambassador in Washington. And graciously, Peacock did Howard and his country proud. But fast forward to this week, when 5 so-called moderate Liberals, Tasmanian Bridget Archer, Victorian Katie Allen, and the 3 from New South Wales, Fiona Martin, Trent Zimmerman and Dave Sharma, and Sharma, I have to say, I always thought he was better than this, they failed to tell the Prime Minister of their intentions, which would have given him the chance to pull the discrimination bill, the religious bill, from the House and avoid the embarrassment. But instead, they kept it from their leader. They crossed the floor and they gave Labor a significant parliamentary win. Now, they're backbench Liberals. They're entitled to their views, and in the Liberal Party, they're also entitled to the right to cross the floor if there's a significant issue for them. But they're not entitled to grandstand at the Prime Minister's expense in ways that make a difficult election even harder to win, especially given that every single one of them were elected in 2019 on a platform that included legislating, not for transgender rights, which is why they crossed the floor, but they were elected to legislate for religious freedom. Now, I know that a couple of Conservative senators have also been on strike too, Gerard Rennick and Alex Antic, over vaccine freedoms, but at least they've been upfront about it. And they haven't suddenly let the PM down in the midst of his most difficult week yet. Then on top of the leaked text messages we talked about last week, there was another leak reported today, this time an insider's blow-by-blow account of a cabinet brawl over parliamentary tactics, suggesting that there really is a rat in the cabinet ranks who doesn't want the Liberals to win. All of this, of course, was too much for Malcolm Turnbull, who never misses a chance to attack the party that made him Prime Minister. This morning, he pounced on the ABC, of course, calling Scott Morrison a wedge hunter, insisting that the Liberal Party is dominated by those he calls the religious right, and going as far as to say that he never supported religious freedom legislation that he himself promised.
The religious right, which are very, very well represented in the coalition party room, were appalled. You know, they couldn't believe it. They'd been so opposed to same-sex marriage. And so there was pressure. Then the proposition was put to me and to the government, you know, there is this terrible discrimination and prejudice against people with strong religious views. I mean, one colleague said, oh, you know, people with strong Christian views can't get on boards in Sydney. And I said, look, that's just rubbish. There is an element in the sort of religious right, and you see this in politics, which wants to go after these culture war issues. You know, same-sex marriage was a massive one. It was an absolute galvanising issue for the religious right. I mean, there were all sorts of rearguard actions trying to blow it up. And all I did was appoint a very sensible, experienced person in Phil Ruddock to do a review. That's literally all I did.
The revisionism. But it kept putting the boot into the coalition with this claim that both the Prime Minister and Peter Dutton have made Australia weaker by the way they've handled China. Just listen to this from a former Liberal leader.
I think it's really reckless. I think it undermines Australia's security. It is dealing with matters of grave national security purely for crass political advantage. I mean, Dutton has a habit of doing this. He does it to wedge the Labor Party, and he does it, frankly, to wedge Morrison. So his standard tactic is to rush off to the right, to the sort of sky after dark agenda and that sort of thing, and then wedge whoever his target is, and it's more often or not other people in the Liberal Party.
No prizes for guessing, is there, whose side Turnbull is on this election? It makes you nostalgic for the days when Liberal leaders and former leaders could have their differences yet still want their rivals to succeed for the good of the party and the benefit of our country. Howard and Peacock were both Liberals, albeit of a different stripe. But what about those so-called Liberals who are making the government's task harder by the day? Whatever happens at the election, Liberal branch members and supporters, they need to reclaim their party from the politically correct carpetbaggers who now have far too much sway. The moderates might be big in number in the party room in Canberra, but out there amongst the rank and file, they're a very, very small rump. And they're a small rump that's fast sending the Liberal Party into opposition and worse, helping put Anthony Albanese in the lodge.